Christmas Day. And so we got the trust established in 2 hours. And doing the paperwork, scanning it to the bank getting a tax ID number, and it was all done, and he was good to go. And the money that she had to check, he was going to boom, it was done. We don't prefer that it has to go that but we had 3 or 4 scenarios where it had to go that quickly because the money had to get out of their name. Next month, the Medicaid waiver was going to be suspended. That happened to somebody, could have happened to somebody else. But yeah. Preferably by the end of the month. If it's not by the end of the month, it may count as income against them whenever the government finds out they had it. So we can correct those 2 mistakes. So we prefer that everything was done and it was all going into that third-party trust. The last one, we can't correct. That's if you basically disinherit the person with disabilities. So you leave it to Joe's sibling, Mary, because you think Mary's going to take care of Joe. But Mary says, I'm going to go to Atlantic City instead, and I'm going to gamble, and loses all the money. We can't get it back. Or if Mary's in an accident and is sued, that's Mary's money. But it was meant for Joe. No, Mary, you got the money, it's yours. So we can't do anything. So don't disinherit your child. Instead, direct it to the third-party trust. And even if your kid's the best kid in the world, things happen. Like an accident or something like that. So you just want to protect whatever you're living. And you never know who they're going to marry, right? You never know. So this is what we do. So this gives you that list if you didn't get to write it down. This is everything a trustee has to do when it comes to managing or administering a trust. And then these are other things that a trustee can do. And that's everything that we do on the left-hand side. So we do what, the money's spent based on how you want the money to be spent. We meet their needs and priorities. We have a progressive fee schedule, so you're asking these are some of the things. This isn't the list, the ultimate list, but this is what we do because our mission statement is to advocate for people with disabilities. So that's at the heart of the program. And then we have these other services. But I have another list that I'll answer. So this is how our trust works. There's a grantor, that's the person establishing the trust, or people, a beneficiary, and the primary representatives. Those are the people who can make requests out of the trust. So on a family-funded trust, the grantors and the beneficiaries are always 2 different people, right? Because on the family-funded trust, the person with disabilities may never establish it, and they may never fund it. Now they can be a primary representative. They can make requests out of their trust if they want to. You can name them, as long as there's not guardianship that takes away their right to sign contracts, they can make requests out of their trust. With us, there's a process. If you're the trustee, or successor trustees, then you want to keep that account recording. So if he needs an iPad, for example, well, if he has a Medicaid waiver, you tell him to go back to the support coordinator to get the iPad through the Medicaid waiver. But if he doesn't have a Medicaid waiver, and you get him an iPad, keep the receipt, keep the documents that shows the invoice that you bought this for him, so that if anybody comes back for an account report, you have that information. Right? It's important to keep the information of how the funds are being spent. On a first-party trust, the grantor and the beneficiary and the primary, they could all be one and the same person. Remember, on a self-funded trust, the individual with disabilities may establish it. They're the beneficiary, and they could potentially be making requests out of the trust because they're able to do that. Whenever it's a private trust, the trustee is responsible for all of this. Apart from being the beneficiary, of course. So with us, we have a form. You complete that, and we always want a receipt, an invoice, a bills, a statement, something. Again, if you're the trustee yourselves, you keep track of those documents. We want a completed document, a disbursement request form and the documentation. And then what you need to do, what we do with it, and what you would need to do if you had your own trust, or whoever the trustee was, you want to verify that it's for the benefit of the individual. You don't want them using the money in the trust to take. It's happened where the friends have come and said, take us to Virginia Beach, pay for the hotel, pay for the transportation, pay for everything, right? And we'll say no, and then the individual's like, they keep asking me. So I've actually had a meeting with all the friends, and I've said, no, we'll pay for the trust can pay for the hotel room. And I don't really care who's in the hotel room, right? You need a hotel room, you're going on vacation. But if you want to go on vacation with them, you're paying your own transportation, you're paying your own food, right? So you want to know, to make sure it's for the benefit of the person with a disability, it doesn't jeopardize benefits, it's following the grantor's wishes, it's a legitimate request, it's not contact lenses for a blind person, it's, that one got denied, and it's legal. Okay. So those are the steps you have to go through, yes.
Is there a payment involved, a fee, when they take what you use disbursement time?
No, we don't charge a fee for disbursement. And a trustee normally doesn't charge a fee for dispersing either, so. These are some of the things that they can pay for. Those are my girls. That's not our boat. It's called Uptown Girl, that boat. That's in Maryland. We'll stop there. So they can pay for these dental care vacations. These are the most common disbursements that we see. Dental care, vacations, phone bills, clothes, veterinary bills, hobbies, car insurance. Pre-need burial, that's funeral, burial, cremation, order, that's a pre-need. When it's a self-funded trust, because that trust closes, when a person passes, those things do have to be purchased in advance. And then the general rule is anything not covered by Medicaid and supplemental security income. So Medicaid covers health care, generally, right? Durable medical equipment. Supplemental security income is room and board. So if a person has SSI and Medicaid, so you can use the SSI and Medicaid to cover those expenses. If they don't, if they have SSDI and Medicare and entitlements, it could pay for anything and everything. Okay? We could fill the walls with everything that the trust could pay for. So people call and say, can you give me a list of what the trust can pay for? No, because it's extensive. I can tell you what it doesn't pay for. It doesn't pay for those things that the government benefits pay for. Now, if you did want the trust to pay for room and board, then we talk to you about that. We look at how much the room and board was, we look at the trust value, there's a lot of things that are taken into consideration. It can pay for room and board, but generally we don't. And I'll talk more about that when we get to ABLE.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Who is tracking when you take money out for disbursement for something? Who knows about that? Like, who is this person that says you have to show the receipt?
So if you have a trust with us, then we know how they're dispersing. So what we do, let's say the trust is funded, then we ask the person to complete a budget. There's a budget form in there. When we get the first draft, and then my account manager sits down with them and
This is Ruby Ark as trustee.
this is, we're the manager and he is the trustee. So we create a budget with them, and then we say, okay, you have so much money in the trust, you're this old, you have another 30 years to live based on statistics and your disability, so you can comfortably spend $7,000 a year to maintain this trust for the rest of your life. And so when they disperse, we're keeping track of that annually to make sure that they're not exceeding it, they're not buying 3 flat screen TVs and blah, blah, blah. If they need medical care or dental care, then of course that gets paid for and we readjust. So we're tracking that, we're keeping it.
But if there's a bank account, let's say I have a bank account that's in my daughter's name.
Yeah.
I can't go and take that money out and purchase something for her?
Is that a trust account that you
Yeah.
have? You can, yeah. If you're the trustee of the trust and you've established a trustee account at the bank, and you have the right as trustee to write a check, yes. You should keep track of that, because if she has SSI and her Medicaid, they have the right to come back to ask how you've been dispersing from the trust.
So in that scenario, what is the role the ARC plays?
Not at all, because you're managing the
So
trust
I'm the
yourself.
manager.
Yeah, you're the trustee of the
instead
trust.
the manager.
Right. Yeah, so that's what I call the private trust. So you're completely in control of all of that.
Okay.
You're in control of dispersing, investing, check writing, and keeping track of how the funds are being spent. So we had a scenario where the parents, we didn't know the parents, we didn't know anything, we didn't know this whole family, but the court ordered a trust be established with us. When we got the trust, there was $30,000 in it. When it was established, there was $300,000 in it, and the brother was the successor trustee of the parents. And so hypothetically, right, the woman was living in squalor in an apartment about this size with another woman, and the brother was driving a Mercedes and living it up, right? Somebody saw that and reported it to the court, because anybody can report it to the court. And the court wanted an account reporting from the guy to say how you've been spending the funds. It's your fiduciary responsibility to provide that information. And he left. So he's gone. He's gone, yeah. And anytime he's in town, we only know about it after the fact, hypothetically, because the sister wants to remain in contact with him, so she doesn't want to give him up to the courts, right? But in that scenario, he made a bad choice, or many bad choices. Right. But that's not always the case. You know, some people, when there's private trustees, they either do a really good job, a really bad job, or they didn't do anything at all because they're afraid of doing either. Yes?
So in her case, she could transfer that to the trust, and then she would not be a trustee of an account that no longer existed, right?
Right,
If
you
she
could
wanted to.
decant that to a
Or we
trust
could
with
do that.
us, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you can always move the trust to us, if you have the authority. We always need to see the legal documents, we send them to our attorney, she reviews them and writes back and says, go ahead, you can do it. It may require what's called a decanting agreement. You establish the trust with us, and then you decant, you pour the funds into the trust with us, and then revoke the trust. Yeah. Yes?
So when you say he left, so what does it mean? The one, the brother who spent all the money just disappeared? I mean, he can't
Yeah, he
just
left
like
the state, yeah, he left the state. We know,
Okay.
we know what state he's in, we knew what state he was in,
Okay.
but we never knew when he was coming back. And we only knew after he'd been, oh, my brother was here, yeah. So they could try to get the money back, you know, if they knew where he was, they could try to get the money back, they could tell him he has to sell the Mercedes, but I don't know if it's, how enforceable that really is. Yeah. That doesn't happen often, but it happens, you've heard stories in the press, it's always the bad stuff that pops up, right, it's not the good stuff. So you asked about the strength, so we're in a unique position, so we're a nonprofit first that advocates for people with disabilities, that's our mission, so we approach it from that, we don't approach it as a nonprofit that established it to manage a trust. We're a nonprofit for people, and this is one of the services we provide. We're experts in current disability regulations, we have to be, we have to keep up with everything. There's minimal family responsibility, which to me, that's the biggie for me. I don't burden any of my family members. I don't have anybody really that I would want to put in a position of administering the trust. I would rather that, I have 2 nieces and 2 nephews. Both nephews have disabilities, and the 2 nieces are younger than my girls. Those are the same age peers that I'm dealing with. So in my scenario, there's really nobody that I would say, can you manage this trust? My second cousins, there's a whole slew of them, right? I'd rather they knew there was a trust, and they could pick up the girls and fly down to Disney, or take them to Atlantic City, or go to the beach or whatever. Knew that there was money that they can use to be with my kids. And then, thank you very much, drop off the receipts and walk away, right? Not have to be managing and administering. There's multiple checks and balances, so whenever the disbursement comes into us, we do that at 2 levels. First, the account manager gets it, she verifies, she brings it to me. I either approve it, cell phone bill, pet food, car insurance. I disapprove it. There's a $4,000 shower bench. Or I say it's pending. Okay, we can pay the dental bill, but we need the invoice. And then my account manager calls the dentist, and all the providers are very happy to send us invoices. We get anything we need, yes.
So I'd seen before it said veterinary services, and you've mentioned pet food, so it doesn't have to be a service dog, it could be just their family pet. So food and vet, all of that, that's
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, we'll look at it though, so whenever we got a bill in for veterinary medicine and vitamins and yada, 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 and we said to the person, okay, get this from the vet, but we're gonna go online and order you the pet vitamins from Pet Vitamin City or whatever, where they cost half as much. So we look at that too, especially when we get a proposal as opposed to after the fact. So we do a lot of talking with the individual. My account manager is the person who speaks most frequently to people with disabilities, because they're calling in and saying, can I get this? Should I do that? Is it okay if I do that? So she has a lot of conversation.
Or the parents of,
Pardon?
or the parents of the person who's.
Or whomever calls us, but yeah, but most frequently it's the people with disabilities that are calling in when there are questions about dispersing. In the beginning, it's the parents, and then after the second or third time, We usually get it. But, you know, the people with disabilities are repetitive calls. And they like the conversation, they like to know that there's somebody they can talk to as well. So when we have, you know, Joe calling in every day, Joe is asked to call on Thursdays between 2 and 3. Or Trini calls him on Thursdays, because it can be, you know, too much. And everybody's really good about it. We have low fees, and you'll see that there's no minimum, so our minimum is now $250. I have to go back and change that. We do the account reporting and tax reporting, that is the key, does the account reporting and tax reporting, but if Social Security comes back and says, we want an account report of how the funds have been spent over the last year, or when you do a recertification for subsidized housing, it's an annual recert, meaning my assistant goes in and clicks a button and has all the information and sends the information with the cover letter to Social Security. Anytime there are issues with Social Security, you call us and we contact our regional contact at Social Security, who then contacts the local office to resolve the issue. So we have contacts in the different agencies as well that we can draw on to resolve issues that really are created by the local offices because they don't understand all of this. There's customized investments, anything over $250,000 you may customize, anything under, there's portfolios from which to choose.
And that's working with Key Bank?
Yes, yeah, I'm talking about key here. And then we can hold real property and you can do in-kind transfers of investments. So if you have AT&T stock, you can transfer that into the trust with us. This is everything we do, so I'll skip that because we've already talked about that. So this is like a review sheet for you if you want to go back and review, because I want to get to the able. We have an advocate program as well, so this is whether or not you have a trust with us. You can contact our advocate. It's a fee for service. We have 2 different fee schedules for trust clients and non-trust clients. But this is for, and this came because people have said to me in the consultations, who's going to advocate for my child when I'm gone? So that's Caroline. She can write advocacy plans. Instead of you writing your own letter of intent, you can sit down with Caroline and write a long-term advocacy plan. It addresses 16 different areas. I named a few of them. I can never remember all of them, but that's the housing, employment, recreational. Or short-term. We have adults with disabilities that come in. Hypothetically, he lost his job, was evicted from his apartment, his bicycle was stolen, he was on the street, and he was drinking again, and he needed some within 24 hours. Got his transportation figured out and worked on volunteer opportunities until they got him back to a job. Help people with application processes, different things like that. And so the advocate works directly with the individual with disabilities, the family members, whoever's an important person in that person's life to make sure that they're cared for. So I have in my long-term advocacy plan, this is how far this letter of intent, I'm doing this, this is why I said I haven't written, this is how much I've gotten written. So the first thing I did was legal. If my girls ever get into legal trouble, hire the best attorney you can find. Keep them out of jail. That's basically the goal, keep them out of jail, right? Because I don't want that to happen to them. And that's my example I always bring up, because that really scares me. I don't want anything to happen. You never know, right? You never know. But it's also check in on them once a month, whether you call them, do a drop-in visit, go to the ISP, go to the meetings for the Medicaid waiver on an annual basis. These are all things that are important, and I don't have anybody else that's going to step in and advocate for them at that point. So I have the art going in and doing it, and then using the trust funds. So whether or not you have a trust with us, you can use an advocate to do that. And it's more than competitive. The fees are more than competitive. They're much lower than the elder care providers that are charging a lot these days. This just tells you how many self-funded trusts we have. The blue, the gray is the family unfunded, and the green is the family-funded trust. So Key is managing over $25 million for us now in the special needs trust. So that gives you access to other investments as well, because they're doing such large amounts, 17 million in income growth or growth income, whichever it is, that gets invested. So they access more vehicles than if you had 200,000 you were investing, because the funds are pooled together. So it helps to keep the fees low, and then the investment power is stronger.
Why is it the ARP is so heavy in the self-funded? Because you're dealing directly with the disabled person?
because people didn't plan. Either families didn't plan and left money to the individual with disabilities, or because we cover Maryland, they changed, and I don't have the graph in here, but it's on the first page. In your folder. This chart here gives you year by year. So in 2014, Maryland changed what's called their contribution to care. Thank you. And so that meant that the individuals with disabilities in Maryland only had to pay $375 a month for their contribution to care, and the rest of it was for them to spend. So if they had SSI, it was okay, but whenever we had people on SSDI that were getting $1,700 a month, they now had $1,400 left over. And so they became over-resourced. In the second month, they were already jeopardizing their Medicaid waiver and their other benefits. And so we were establishing a lot of trusts in Maryland over the last 2.5, 3 years to keep them under the resource limit. So it's either because the monies weren't directed where they needed to go to begin with, or there was a change in the service delivery and cost. That's the two main reasons why we're seeing so many self-funded. We're really working on the family-funded portion of it, but it's not changing. It's just, no matter how much you talk to people, people keep, and it's typical, they keep putting it off. I report to a board and they said, well, in the beginning when I was doing presentations, well, how long is it taking for people to get back to you? It's a year, 2 years. It's not like some people come back the next week or the next month, but it takes a while, right? We got a lot going on. So eventually it becomes a priority, but that's why the self-funded is the way it is. The growth, these are our fees. So there's a one-time enrollment fee of $1,000. I'm sorry, this is the school calling twice. Hello? Hi, this is Steve. You're welcome.
I'm just going to ask while she's gone, does anybody have any questions about the ARC of Loudoun or about any other services?
I do.
Oh, sure.
Do you all have elder law attorneys that have worked with the ARC that you can?
I do have a list of elder law attorneys.
Okay.
And we have some that in the summer will do a presentation on guardianship. And there are 2 elder law attorneys that I've worked with, even in a previous job, who will probably come and do that presentation. But I have a list that I can send you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd like one.
Sure.
So these are fees. So there's a one-time enrollment fee to establish the trust. It's $1,050, and that's check, cash, credit card, or monthly payment plan. Payment plan has no fees or interest or penalties. If you establish a trust with an attorney, they start at around $1,000. That's the rate in our area in Northern Virginia. If you go outside of Northern Virginia, it'll be less than $1,000 for the trust. We have a buy one, get one half off on special needs trusts. So the stack, I have 2 kids with disabilities. You gotta think ahead, right? So if you have one trust with us, either for the sibling, or we have a mother-daughter relationship, or the person needs a family-funded and a self-funded trust, the second one is half price, $525.
So if you have twins,
You have twins, for example. Yep, exactly. Or a 24-year-old and a 19-year-old, right? We're thinking about it, see?
Yeah.
We have 3 kids on the autism spectrum in one family, right? So you have 3 trusts, so 1,050, 525, 525. And then when it's an unfunded trust, that means there's no money in it. That's that it's $65 annual renewal fee 1 year after the trust is established. And that'll be every year until it's funded. At any given time, you can put money into the trust, and then the 65 goes away. And then it's our annual management fee is 0.75%. That's drawn quarterly, so it's 1/4 of 0.75. And the trustee fee is 0.9. So it's 1.65% of the corpus of the trust. So that's actually competitive. If you went to a financial institution, they're charging the same amount. We're working with Key because we're approaching 30 million, so we're working with them, and they've agreed to reduce their fees. We don't have a number yet, but they're going to reduce their fees as the corpus, as the amount of money they're investing grows, which is good news. And there's also a progressive fee schedule, so up to the first million it's 0.75 that the ARC charges, and then 1 to 2 million is 0.5, and 2 million or more is 0.4. So we are getting larger trusts. Because attorneys say, oh, don't do a special needs trust because you're gonna have to pay the fees. If it's a large amount, just put small amounts into a trust with the ARC or with a pooled program. But that doesn't hold true anymore because we now have multiple investment vehicles and good people that are managing the funds and the work that we do for you. So it's a myth, basically, that the attorneys are spreading that we're trying to break. Because it really depends on who do you want to manage the funds and who do you want to administer the trust, right? So with the progressive fee schedule, we have larger trusts now of future money, $3, $4, $5 million, yes.
So if you were starting up one and you had twins, as an example, it'd be 1,050 plus 525 plus 250 per child. If you wanted to fund it up front,
Correct.
and then that gets you in the door, and then you can breathe without having to worry about the $65 fee.
Correct. And you don't have to do the 200, you can do the 250 at any given time. You can wait until, like the family today, I said they have till next year.
You can put it on a credit card,
to
right?
put, you can put on a credit card, there are fees on a
Get the
credit
points,
card.
it's okay, but you get
Yeah.
the points.
Do you have points, yeah.
And then I guess the part about the 1.65 being competitive and everything, with what's your average return with the multiple investment vehicles that you all?
So the last couple of months, it's not been pretty, as you can imagine. So it's anywhere, we've seen between 5 and 8% on the returns. We do post it on the website as well, and you can talk to our financial manager at any given time, whether or not you were, I say our, meaning Key Private Banks, whether or not you have a trust with us or not, you can talk to them. But they're doing well. We also have our foundation money, our endowment, invested with Key Private Bank in one of the portfolios.
And so do these accounts see this return quarterly, just like the
Monthly.
Oh, monthly, okay,
Yeah.
so it kind of is likely to turn out that it's not gonna cost
You can cover
anything,
your own
as long as you
Right.
put your 250 in.
Exactly.
per
So
account.
historically, 2008 tanked, 2019 went up. 2011, it was 0.54%. 2015, it was a low interest, it barely covered. But all the other years in between, it was more than the 1%, more than 1.65%, more than 2-3%. So, like I said, between 5 and 8% is what we've seen up until the last couple of months with Key.
But that fee is effectively covering, to be able to call up a consultant and talk and get things changed, and that's sort of the management fee for, and there's no fees on top of that for
Correct.
having you write a check or
Correct,
manage the accounting or do the taxes, right?
correct.
So that,
Yeah, it's all included. And
it's a good
we're,
ROI.
yeah, so that's one of the discussions we have with the Foundation of the Ark in Northern Virginia, which is the separate nonprofit that oversees the trust that I report to. Every time anything comes up about fees, there's one guy on the board that inevitably says, well, maybe we need to be charging for disbursements. And then I have to go back and draw research from the other programs that, what are they doing? But another person inevitably says, but we're here for the people with disabilities. They don't have the money, they don't need to be paying these fees. And so this has been the same fee schedule for the 10 years that we were with SunTrust and now the 2 with Key. That's not changed, and we're looking at reducing them. And I'll fight to like dying breath that we don't charge for disbursements, because I don't think it's fair. And it will be a nightmare. Then my account manager has to start tracking that as well.
You
So
need
that
to get
means-
that guy off the board.
No, it's always good to have one person to say. You can't have all naysayers, it gets boring. Yes.
Once you fund the trust, is it irrevocable? Is it, if
Yes.
the funds are in there forever, right?
Well,
Or-
you can either spend them down for the benefit of the individual or transfer it to another trust of the same kind.
Okay.
So just like somebody can decant into ours, you can also decant out of it.
But it stays in the special needs trust?
Yeah,
Forever.
special needs, yeah.
Yep.
There's a termination, a potential early termination clause in the documents, but it's completely hypothetical. It says in some certain circumstances, the trust may be terminated. That's if the individual's healed. You know, there's now a cure for Down syndrome and they're running around, they're all healthy, and they can manage their money and everything. Or if the government says, oh, you can have $1 gazillion in your name and you're gonna get government benefits. Right?
Yeah.
So like I said, hypothetical. Yes, sir.
So it's a lot like if you switch from one company to another, rolling over your 401k into another company. You don't get access to the money, it rolls over into the next 401k.
Right.
So
And then the financial man, you work directly with the bank, then we connect you with the bank, and then you guys handle all of that. Just like when people want to customize their investments, and that's unique to our program. There's another trust program down in Richmond, but you can't customize the investments, and you don't have the 8 portfolios from which to choose if you don't want to customize. It's this, we're taking your money, thank you very much. Here we give you options to do that. And if you customize, you have to talk to Key Bank as well. We don't get involved in any of that.
And after they die, whatever money is left, Medicaid and SSI have?
No, not on the family funded trust. On the
Okay.
family funded trust, you're gonna leave it to your other daughter's trust.
Okay.
And then when the second daughter passes, it goes to whomever else you name.
Give to the other sibling.
The
It's
other
the
six.
self-funded.
Family funded, you direct it. The best one is the family funded trust. You
Okay.
decide who's gonna inherit, it stays open, it can be used to pay for vacations, gifts, they can buy their siblings gifts, and whatnot. Then it's the self-funded. Self-funded it's for the sole benefit of the individual, but it can still pay for things, it can still pay for a companion to take the kids to Disney because they can't go on their own, because that's benefiting them, but it has a Medicaid payback. It was their money, and then the able accounts, which we're gonna get to now. So family funded is what we wanna be doing. If we can do it, we can do the family funded.
So what happens if they get a job and they're making, right,
We
we all hope, right?
Yeah.
And there's a small amount monthly that they're making. So
But they can't spend, or you don't want them to spend. So the first thing I
so
was.
that you're gonna deposit into the special needs account.
Potentially, I'll talk about able. But let's say my daughter just got a job, yay, she's been working, we call her J-O-B, we don't say the word out loud really. So she's, and Denny's in Fairfax, so if you're there, go in Friday, Saturday, Sunday morning, 9 to 12, and tell the manager how fantastic it is that they have a person with disabilities. But she'll start, she's making $8.50 an hour. So that's, I set up a bank account, so her paycheck's gonna go into that. That's her money to spend. I have to report it, or I'm gonna teach her how to report it to Social Security, because she gets SSI. So SSI will waive the first $65 and the next $20, they break it up like that. So the first $85 she earns, they don't count. And then after that, for every $2 she earns, they take $1 of Social Security. So she'll have something, so it'll kind of even out, right? But she'll have some spending money. I'm gonna let her spend it. But if it started accumulating, she could either establish a first-party trust, or I could raise her rent, which I may do, because she's paying me rent since she gets SSI, and it's for room and board, she pays me rent for groceries, right? So that's one way to resolve that issue.
My daughter makes more than that, and we will have to manage it, so I was just wondering how, I was gonna ask this at some point, but how do you manage that? I mean,
So either it's a first-party trust, or you would set up an ABLE account, if she were diagnosed prior to the age of 26. So
and so can
I'll
you
go
have
compare
it
it.
go directly into that?
No.
Or you have to move it physically?
You have, well, you can automatic bank transfer, but income may never go directly into a first-party trust or an ABLE account. It always has to land in the person's
So you
bank
have to
account,
physically move it.
and then you move it in. Yes?
As a parent, of course, you never think like this, and you never wish, and God forbid, your special, with the trust fund, your special needs child with the trust fund isn't an accident, no. The plane,
No.
crashes or a car crash and dies. What happens to all that you established for the special needs person?
So you're saying the trust is unfunded?
Oh, either.
There's no money in the trust. We did everything we needed to do, and everything was in order, and you're alive and kicking, and your child's alive, and everything's great, and then there's an accident, and you're still alive, so the trust has never been funded, right? So you.
What if it has?
What if
What if it has
has
been
So
funded?
it has been funded, so you decided who's going to inherit. On the family funding, you decide who's going to inherit. So if you name the sibling, then the sibling would get what's in the trust.
What about if it's self-funded?
If it's self-funded, it's either Medicaid payback, Medicaid in the heirs of the estate, or the Arc of Northern Virginia's trust program.
Which one's a better option?
Well, family funded, right? If you've done your planning and you still have control over the money, that's always the best option. The self-funded is, oops, I'm in this situation, but here's a solution that's going to protect the benefits. This is you doing your plan, your futures planning, making sure that you got all your ducks in a row and you have all the money going where it needs to go for your child with disabilities. This is oh gosh. you
I
just
won the
got-
lottery.
Pardon?
I won the lottery.
Yes, well, if you won the lottery, put it in the family fund.
I meant your kid won the
The
lottery.
kid won the lottery, put it in the self, it has to go to the self-funded.
Yeah.
If they have means tested benefits or you're applying for those. Okay?
But
If
either
it's
either
unfunded.
program, you would designate one or more other heirs or whatever you want to call it, because the original beneficiary is no longer with us.
You need to name who will inherit if there are funds left in the trust, whichever one it is. This has the Medicaid payback on it, this one doesn't. That's why you want to be doing this one. But let's say you did set up everything and your child predeceased you and the trust is unfunded. Well, you have to now go back and change everything, right? Because you revoke this family funded trust, it's unfunded, you revoke it. And you change your will, you change any beneficiary designation, anywhere where you named this trust, you'd have to go back and change.
That was my other question. It's come up a couple of times. So, funded or unfunded trust? What would you, you have an unfunded trust. What does an unfunded trust mean versus a funded trust?
Unfunded is it's an empty vessel just waiting for the day you die. And then the money that you've left the trust will go into it and then it's funded. Okay, so Sheridan has a funded trust. So if her dad makes a volunteer, instead of child support, because I trust him and he's still very dear to me, I didn't say do irrevocably assign child support to self-funded. I didn't do that. I said, okay, I know you're gonna pay. So just make a voluntary contribution to the third-party trust, which he does. So that gets funded. So she has a funded trust. Sky's trust is unfunded. And that's simply because I haven't directed the funds that he's voluntarily contributed into that trust yet. So one's funded and one's unfunded, and that's fine. It's okay. What some parents do is, I wanted money in the trust, and I'm going to put money in disguise and get her a debit card too, because of course she's saying Sheridan has a card, why don't I have one? Right? So I want to give her a card too, because you're teaching them money management, you're teaching them responsibility, you're teaching them how to work with the ARC and to become as independent as they can be and stepping out of the picture, right? So Sheridan now, and I'll teach Sky when she gets her card, how to call in and find out what her balance is. Because if she books a lift, she has her app and she's booking a lift and it gets rejected, that means there's no money on the card, right? So she needs to go and check her